Until something deep beneath, they got up on the wrong side of deadliest force for destruction.
Why would a man like him slaughter the woman he loved and then hang himself?
Well, I don't know. Human mind.
Yeah, a research project on suicide with a researcher commits suicide.
Don't go inside! Someone's in here, Mommy! There's someone down there! Get the door open!
Where's the axe? Where's the axe? Come on! Keep away from the door!
No, I will!
Don't worry, Bobby. I'll get you out.
Why? Who's there? Who's in this house?
Dr. Freudstein!
Bob! No, Bob. You should have listened to what I said.
This is Jared McVeigh from Island of Blood, a.k.a. Whodunit, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back. This is episode 286, and this time we're heading to that house by the cemetery. And we were joined by long-term friends of the show, Leo Dean. How are you doing, Leo? Good to have you back on the show. We were just discussing before we started. This is your third time you joined us, so always good to have you aboard.
I'm happy to be here as always. I'm looking forward to discussing this film. I'm very curious to see what you guys think about it because I know it. Some people have problems with it and stuff. But if I'll go to my grave defending this, and including Bob's voice.
Well, that's fighting talk, perhaps. We'll see. But yeah, it's kind of. Is this the first? We've done the New York Ripper, haven't we? I think.
Yes.
Is that the only Lucio Fulci title we've done?
Have we done Murder Rock?
Oh, no, we did Murder Rock, didn't we? I think.
Yeah.
But we haven't done any of his 70s, 60s Jali yet. But maybe that's to come, hopefully. So, but Erik, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
I recognise that voice.
Mm.
So, yes. Well, don't stand too close to...
The girl in the picture kept telling me not to go to that house.
Don't stand too close to any doors, Erik.
I won't.
You see what you've unleashed, Leo.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Well, it should make for a fun discussion. So, Nathan, how are you doing?
I'm on Leo's side because let me tell you something. If something's coming up after me in the basement, like Dr. Freudstein or whatever, like I'm going to be screaming for my mom, too.
Well, yes.
This is just like the worst, house to live in. So,
except if you're Justin.
Well, maybe not with a murderer downstairs, but we'll get on to the main pick shortly. But Joseph, how are you doing?
I'm good, actually. Yeah, good.
Cool, excellent. Well, that's good, and I'm good. I'm looking forward to seeing this one. It's the first time. Well, it was first time watch for me, but not discuss it. But it's the first time I've seen it in high definition. This go around. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later. But obviously, in time-honoured tradition, we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been watching recently. So, as our guest, Leo, do you want to tell us about anything you've seen or read?
The only thing I really seen recently was the new Evil Dead movie. I know you guys discussed it in the past couple shows throughout the last couple episodes. I liked it. I didn't love the movie. I liked it better than the 2013 version, but I don't know what it is. I felt it was really missing Bruce Campbell. I think Joseph had said that as well. But I mean, it's good. I'm gonna buy it for the collection, because I'm a completist. But there was things I liked about it, things I didn't like about it. I thought the pacing was a little off. I did like the setting, though. I thought was pretty good. The way it was set up and stuff. But it's the other movies. For me, that's always going to be the first one. The first one to me is the most scariest. This one I don't feel like it was scary, but that's about all I could say about it.
I think that's kind of the consensus we had, really, wasn't it? That I think we all preferred it to the 2013 version. Yeah.
Well, I actually hadn't seen it yet. It was part of my recently seen as well.
Oh.
But yeah, I've finally got around to watching it as well, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. It is kind of missing something, that the originals had. I don't know if it's just nostalgia or whatever for me, but I still really enjoyed it. It's very gory. It's not super dour like the remake, although again I do like the remake, so just making sure that everyone out there knows that I'm not insulting it in any way, just saying that I thought that this one had a little bit more of a playful kind of tone to it, especially with the taunting from the dead to the living. Like, it just seemed a lot more like the dead were having fun, and I prefer the Evil Dead to have fun in my Evil Dead movies.
Well, it's very equal opportunities of you, Nathan.
Yeah, you're very kind to the Evil Dead.
Well, hey, in the original, when they awakened them, the Evil Dead even said, "Why have you disturbed our sleep?" If they hadn't have disturbed them, they'd still be sleeping.
Well, they literally did have friends and family as well, didn't they?
Yeah, I know.
Before they were dead.
Yeah, and I'm like, hey, you wake me up, you might be getting something like that as well. Especially if the nap has been probably... I mean, who knows how long they've been asleep? Ancient is what they say. So, yeah, it's a long nap.
It'd be like sort of waking the rhubarb lady who's been slumbering for a long time.
Haven't heard from her for a while.
No.
Well, the quizzes will be starting anew.
Exactly, yes. So if you haven't heard, we are going to be citing the quizzes on Patreon. So
expect this.
You dirty nun fucker.
So lots of that, yes. So, and Leo, you said you had some... books that you'd read that you thought people listening might be interested in.
Yeah, I picked up this new book. It's The Making of Creepshow 2. Yeah, I thought, because I know you guys love the second one, preferred mostly, I think, to the first one, from I remember that. Isn't that right on the Patreon? Didn't you all say that?
More or less. I think some of us preferred the stories in the first more than the second, but for me personally, it was a definite love for the second film.
The Raft is a real highlight for me.
I watched that yesterday, actually. One of my once-a-year things.
So this guy also wrote a book, Making of Romero's Day of the Dead. His name is Lee Carr, but it's a gorgeous book. It's about like $29. It's full of color photographs. A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. There's scripts, script pages, corrections, and for the money though, it's really worth it. It's soft cover, and it's definitely a recommendation. I've been skimming through it. I'm going to delve into it over the summer. And there was another book I noticed that I picked up. I saw on one of the message boards I was on. It's called Sackhead, the definitive retrospective on Friday the 13th, Part 2. Now, when I saw that, I'm thinking, okay, well, we already had Crystal Lake Memories. What are they going to talk about? But I got to say, like, just skimming through it, and I know how much you guys loved Part 2, and I know I just listened to your recent commentary, which was fantastic. I think you all would enjoy this book. It's under $20. The foreword is written by Bill Randolph, so that was my other recommendation. Any interest?
I'm interested in the Creepshow 2 one for sure. I actually have Sackhead as well. That sounds like I have a disease. I wasn't that pushed on it. I thought the factual info behind the scenes was quite scant, and there's a lot of each character he does kind of a novelization of each character in each chapter. So we get a little, who Scott was and why he's interested in Terry, and a bit of his backstory and that. I think, which is fine maybe if that's what you wanted. I wanted pure sort of factual stuff, and there isn't a lot of it in the book, I found. But what is there is well written, I thought. If you compare it to something like some of those books, like the Jamie Lee Curtis unauthorized biography, which was very poorly written and very repetitive. This one, it seems like the person behind it has some journalistic nous, I suppose. But yeah, that book wasn't for me. But the Creepshow 2 one, I'm just looking at here on Amazon now, and I'm putting it into my basket because that one does look good. It gives you a sample of some of the pages there as well, and it looks quite tasty. So yeah, I'm going to buy that one.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book, Eric. I think you'll definitely enjoy it. And while Joseph had actually recommended it, I saw on his Facebook page the huge slasher movie quiz book, which I immediately bought by Killian H. Gore. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's where he's going to get all his questions from. I better buy that.
No, I'm not actually. If you want to use the book for your questions when you get to the quiz, that's fine. But yeah, now that Leo mentioned it, it is a good looking book. I haven't read all of it because there's so much in here. But yeah, it's called the Huge Slasher Movie Quiz Book, and he does thank us in the thanks page. And I mean, there's so much like quiz stuff in here. I mean, I don't know how he compiled all this stuff. I mean, it must have taken him months, if not years, to put all this together. But I definitely recommend this if you want a slasher movie quiz book. It's by Killian. It's Killian H. Gore.
I'm amazed too. Some of the questions are just like, I'm scratching my head like, man, this guy really hit it out of the ballpark for this book for sure. So the last book is actually a fictional book. I can't remember if you guys discussed this. It's been out for a while, The Final Girl Support Group. I'm halfway through it. It pulled me in pretty quickly, but now it seems to be slogging on. And I do like the author, Grady Hendrix. He wrote a great book about retro horror paperbacks. Paperbacks from Hell, I believe is the title. He's definitely a fan. And he does some things in there that I like each chapter. He'll put like the Final Girl's Return, like he'll make them like slasher titles for his chapters, referencing, all the normal like Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, which I thought was pretty clever. But I'm interested in the middle now, and it seems like it may be a tad too long. It's about 340 pages. I figured maybe he could have did it. I got to finish it before I don't want to slam it too bad. But I mean, I think you guys might be interested, but not sure.
Cool. Excellent. Well, some good recommendations there. So thank you, Leo. So we'll come back and talk about your main pick shortly. But let's see what else we've been watching. So Nathan, have you seen? You obviously saw Evil Dead Rise.
I watched Demon Wind.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I haven't seen it since I was younger, so I couldn't remember a whole lot about it. But when I rewatched it, I'm like, this movie is terrible in all the best ways. But I mean, the effects are fun, and I think they did, they did decent for having a low budget. But man, the dialogue is just horrible. And like, there's a scene in the movie where, I mean, basically the movie revolves around this guy who wants to go back to his, I think it's like his grandparents' old house or something. And so he gets a group of friends and they go up there because he wants to discover who he is. And, just that's kind of just your basic story. But once they get there, this demonic force traps them. It's kind of like an Evil Dead kind of movie, I guess. Where the demonic force kind of traps them and they all start getting killed off one by one. Now, what I thought is hysterical is there's a scene in it where one of the girls who's freaking out, like, literally gets turned into a doll right in front of all her friends, gets turned into a doll and then bursts into flames. And then in the scene right after that, the hero of the film goes, well, I don't think it's here to hurt us. I think it's trying to warn us. You just watched your friend get murdered. But it's not trying to hurt you. And there's also a great scene in the beginning where one guy's introduction to the movie is him doing magic and karate at the same time. So I'm like, that was a fun character introduction. But I won't say a whole lot because just from watching it, I think we'd have a lot of fun covering this on Patreon at some point. So I'll kind of save a lot of my thoughts for then. But overall, yeah, very entertaining.
I'm aware of that movie, but I've not seen it. But Erik sounded quite enthusiastic.
Yeah, I have it on Blu-ray. Yeah, it's great fun. Yeah, and definitely worthy of a Patreon pick.
Excellent. And Leo, have you seen Demon Wind?
I feel like I have seen it, but it's been so long. I'm definitely familiar with the title. I just looked at the poster art on my phone, and I've definitely seen it, but not enough to comment on it. Definitely interested now to rewatch it since Nathan's so enthusiastic about it. So yeah, thanks, Nathan.
The VHS for it used to have one of those hologram boxes where if you tilt it, like the demon's outside the window, then if you tilt it a certain way, it's busting through. I thought that artwork was so cool.
Holograms rule.
And Joseph, have you seen it?
I remember the box, the hologram box. I know Marquee Movies, Nathan had that same box. Demon Wind, is that when Toya farts?
I thought it sounded familiar. Did she put out an album with that name?
Shut up. Did not have an album called Demon Wind.
Yeah, I don't think I've actually seen it either. I do remember the box, vividly, but no, I haven't seen the movie.
Okay, well, thank you. And anything else?
No, that's all that I've had a chance to watch this time around, aside from our main pick.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you. Joseph, how about you?
The only thing I could mention is I got talked into watching Yellow Jackets, that show on Showtime. It's apparently a part of quote-unquote prestige TV, and that's a rant for later. I'm sure I'll get
is that a term like elevated horror?
Yes, and I hate it. I said I was going to get to that rant later, but I might as well get it out of the way. I hate those buzz terms like that, where you think something you watch is better and you're better for it. I hate that. It really bugs me. But, I decided to watch Yellow Jackets, and, I like the premise of it. It really reminds me a bit of Lost, where, people get lost in stranded out in the wilderness, or, and they have to, have to work together to survive. And there's all this kind of paranormal or supernatural activity going on around them. And then it cuts back into the present day, where they try to lead normal lives after the whole plane crash there in the wilderness. But, boy, this show really drags. I mean, it really has gotten nowhere very slowly. I'm like on season 2, about halfway through, and I could not tell you anything that's going on. It's that uninvolving. Now, the one thing I will say about it, and it's the only reason I keep watching, is Christina Ricci. She is so brilliantly cast as the adult Misty, I think her name is. She's so unrecognizable that you'd never think it was the same person who played Wednesday Addams in the Addams Family movies all those years ago. I mean, she's so excellent that I don't really care that I'm bored with the show. I just want to keep watching to see what she does. So I don't get the hoopla surrounding this show. I mean, maybe it speaks to someone else, more. I mean, obviously it does. It's very popular, but I can't get into the show as a whole, but I'm going to keep watching for Christina Ricci.
Has anyone else seen it? Because I'd heard about the buzz, but then I've seen quite a few people on my Facebook feed saying that the second series goes completely off the rails.
I've seen all of it, first and second season. I enjoy it. I definitely do. But I will say that I think that it's probably one of those shows that would have been better if they had just made it one season and had a beginning, middle, and end of the story. Because I feel like as the second season kept going, it almost felt like they were just scraping to try to come up with new storylines for the characters. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like, especially the current, because, the show is one of those shows that shows you well, this is the past and this is where they are now. And the current stuff, like Joseph was saying, Christina Ricci is amazing as Misty, and I love Elijah Wood, and actually I like all the actors. I think they're all really good, but unfortunately I feel that the show just needs some kind of kick or something, because it does feel like it's kind of starting to tread water a little bit, and I don't know. It's one of those shows that I do enjoy, but the quality has kind of decreased for me.
Yeah, it's also in a way kind of like Lost, where the first couple of seasons of Lost, or first 3 seasons of Lost, really took its time answering some of its mysteries, and this one really doesn't have that excuse. I mean, it's only like 10 episodes per season, whereas Lost was 24 episodes. So, I mean, it feels like they should really kind of get to it by this point.
Yeah, I think that they're trying to just keep it going, but you got to have some fresh storyline ideas. I'm still interested in what they went through after the plane crash, that kind of stuff. I'm interested because some of the characters, we don't know where they are now. If they're dead or alive, we have no idea. So, there's some interest there, but overall, like I said, I feel like it would have been better served to like have a end in mind right from the get-go.
Okay, well, Erik, I take it you've not seen it because
no, I have heard the buzz though, yeah, but I haven't watched it.
No, well, I kind of talking of prestige TV. I'm still watching The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills,
and I'm watching Toya's videos on YouTube, which is prestige TV as well.
Is there a VHS rip of Demon Wind on YouTube?
So, Joseph, was there anything else?
No, that's all I can think of for this particular episode.
Okay, well, thank you. Erik, how about you?
No, nothing for me.
Right, well, I've seen a couple of things, a couple of new movies on streaming. One was called Influencer, which I kind of really enjoyed. It was, as the title suggests, it's about, it's kind of a kind of pastiche of kind of social media influencers. And I don't want to give too much away, but basically the basic premise is a woman's in Thailand and she's kind of a social media influencer. She's just like taking loads of photos and video of her like having at this big resort and drinking cocktails and having massages, but she's really bored by it all. So it's all kind of really false. She's not really into it at all, but she's just putting it on, and she ends up befriending somebody who turns out it wasn't a great idea, and gets taken to a remote island. And there's lots of twists and turns, and various other characters come into it. But it's quite a sort of a dark kind of sort of pastiche of that whole social media influencer thing. And it goes, it kind of turns into a slasher movie a couple of times. There's a couple of scenes where it kind of turns into a bit of a slasher movie. But overall, it's kind of more of a dark comedy thriller. So has anyone seen that?
No.
I know. Okay, it's just come out on streaming. So, but the other one I saw was Hysteria, the Bone Woman. It's a new Mexican horror movie, which is kind of I kind of guess it's one of those one of the many kind of pregnancy or kind of giving birth kind of horror movies. And in this one, there's a young woman who kind of doesn't really want to have a baby particularly, but she feels that she's got to a time in life where it's kind of expected, so she gets pregnant, and her kind of past kind of catches up with her, and she becomes haunted by this kind of apparition, this kind of woman who kind of creeps into her house, and sort of she keeps on seeing her, and everyone thinks she's going crazy. So it's kind of like almost like a Mexican Repulsion, the Catherine Deneuve movie from the Roman Polanski movie. It's got some similarities, and it also has it's kind of more of a, I can guess, kind of a nod to those Asian sort of movies that kind of followed The Ring, specifically those kind of films like Shutter and The Eye. With that kind of things happening in the background, so it's pretty good. It's not great. It's one of those films that doesn't quite go far enough, but I enjoyed it. It was interesting to see another movie in Spanish, so as I can speak a little bit of it now. So I'm kind of guessing I'd be surprised if anyone's seen that, but chime in if you have.
No.
But what I did see, which I think you have seen, Joseph, I watched the first episode of From.
Oh yeah.
So just to see, because I seem to remember you did recommend it, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I love the show. The first season is excellent. I'm about halfway through the second season. I was going to wait until the whole thing was done so I could binge it, but it got about 5 episodes released, and I was like, you know what? I really want to see what happens, so I'm halfway through the second season now.
Okay, yeah, I enjoyed it. It seemed to be kind of, it's got that Stephen King feel to it, isn't it? Kind of cross at Salem's Lot crossed with Under the Dome.
Yeah,
kind of seems to be the central premise. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a lot like Lost as well, and it even stars, like I said, Harold Perrineau from Lost. But what this show does better than Yellow Jackets is it answers a lot of its questions in fairly quick timing. I mean, within those 10 episodes, so that's good. And you get a lot of good scares. Like I said, those things that come out of the woods at night, they look human, and they are human. They're played by actors, but there's just something very, very sinister and creepy about them that I love. And it's a very good premise for a show. And the setup is just, I think it's just really well done. I really recommend this show.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Messiah of Evil.
Yeah.
You know, the one, the 70s flick with those kind of the women in the town, and there's all these kind of creatures, or they all look like normal people, but they're not. So yeah, I'll probably stick with that. So,
and that would be a good Patreon pick there, actually, now that you mention it.
Sounds good. So yeah, so I think that's everything I've seen, apart from obviously Brandy's just called Joyce a big fat pig on the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. So this isn't the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills podcast. We are going to be talking about something arguably more horrific than that. Coming up, we're going to be talking about Lucio Fulci's House by the Cemetery. So do we have a trailer, Joseph?
Actually, we have a TV spot for House by the Cemetery, a very fantastic TV spot.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we'll come in after this.
In the house by the cemetery, what you don't know will hurt you. He has been awaiting the arrival of his new guests. One by one, they are disappearing. Before you get locked into this house, read the fine print. You may have just mortgaged your life. House by the cemetery. No one under 17 will be admitted.
So yeah, that was the fantastic TV spot for House by the Cemetery, and there's more on that I'll get to a little later in background, but this fantastic tale of the macabre focuses on the bizarre happenings that befall a young family as they take up residence in the house by the cemetery. At first, Norman and Lucy ignore the strange tales their young son tells of a little girl who continuously warns him of impending danger. Then they too begin to experience unexplained problems and finally realize the power of the evil demon lurking within their home, only now it is too powerful to stop. In a small New England town, a wicked curse lives on. It will welcome you as you visit the House by the Cemetery. And that was from the back of the old Vestron VHS release of the House by the Cemetery. And as our guest, Leo, I'm going to let you go first, and then I will chime back in afterwards. So your thoughts, please.
Okay, let's just get into the thick of it. Let's get Bob out of the way. I know every time people discuss this film, that's the main focus. And look, I get it. I mean, the dubbing is, it speaks for itself. I know it's not great, but in Lucio Fulci's world, I think it makes perfect sense because most of his movies are so bizarre that it just adds to the charm of the film overall. I mean, what's not to like here? You got slasher elements, you got zombie type elements, you got atmosphere, you have music that is, in my opinion, one of the best soundtracks of all time. I'm a soundtrack collector, so I've listened to a ton of them. And look, the movie has so many things to love about it. I mean, there's stuff that makes you scratch your head, as you're watching it. Like the one scene that always sticks out for me is, after the real estate agent's killed and Anne, the babysitter, is wiping up the blood, and Lucy walks in, looks over her shoulder, she goes, "Oh, hello," or whatever she says. And then the babysitter turns around and says, "Oh, I made coffee." And Lucy never even acknowledges what she's doing, which I'll mention in the background because I do have some stuff about that scene that Katrina McCall had mentioned. But, I mean, even the acting, I think, for a Fulci film, it's if you look at all his movies during this time period, because I guess this is part of his renaissance and, where he was at his best, starting, I'll say, with The Psychic, going through, even through New York Ripper. And, even after that, some things were hit or miss, I know, that part of his career. But this film alone, I think, stands, right up there with all his other great works. I have a lot of background, but I do love this movie, and I'll get into the background about more why I like it. But for now, I just want to hear what everyone else has to say.
Okay, thank you, Leo. For me, The House by the Cemetery has, you mentioned this, that you wanted to get it out of the way first, and I don't know if I could move past it, but House by the Cemetery has a serious Bob problem, and I can't really fault the actor playing the kid. I mean, it's that laughably miscast voiceover used for his dubbing track that's the main issue, and it's obviously an adult female pretending to be a 6-year-old boy, which, I'm sure has worked before elsewhere, but here...
Bart Simpson.
Yeah, it worked with Bart Simpson, but here it really reminds me of that episode of The Dukes of Hazzard where Danny Cooksey plays a little orphan boy who becomes enamored with Roscoe's dog Flash, and they used what sounded like this 80-year-old woman to dub his voice for some reason. And the kid was actually a good little actor. He was on Different Strokes, and he grew up to go to Salute Your Shorts and Terminator 2, and he's a respected voice actor now. So why did they dub his voice with an 80-year-old woman? And that's the question I asked here. Is like, why did they dub his voice? I know it was his language was in Italian, but they could easily have found a better voiceover artist. But that's the conundrum that is Bob for House by the Cemetery. So I guess I will try to move past that, but I can't, because Bob's unending whimpers and that whole mommy, help, mommy, they're so rampant throughout the film. It's kind of like this constant name dropping thing where you could have a drinking game. It's what I like to call the Poltergeist 3 problem. I know this predates Poltergeist 3, but in Poltergeist 3 they really pronounced it, and I think that's kind of what put it into the zeitgeist, was people calling out people's names incessantly. It often outweighs the actual dialogue in the film. So yeah, you will hear mommy, or Bob, or Steve, and maybe a little less apparent, Norman. Yeah, so House by the Cemetery for me, I mean, I think it's a movie I find amusing more than I do, like a good scare. I mean, I love those those idiosyncrasies. I love those. And the 1981 color scheme here, it really takes me back. I mean, you have a lot of brown and so much beige, and there's even puke greens. I mean, one guy's wearing a puke green tie that I loved. And on the gore scale, actually, there's some really impressive stuff here, to be sure. I mean, that fireplace poker through the neck sequence looks so realistic. Even in HD, where you can see the makeup lines, it still looks very good. The blood's the right color, and I kind of wonder how they did that effect. It's just really well done. I should also mention the hilarious bat attack scene, and I love the reaction times of the characters who just seem to stand there and watch one another being thrashed by a wayward bat until they finally react to the bat. It's like there's like a 10 or 15 second gap there. And of course, if you turn the whole Bob or Steve into a drinking game, for variety, you can substitute the name shouting with all the close-ups on inanimate objects, and especially people's eyes. In fact, we see so many close-ups of people's eyes that it actually kills the power of this later reveal in the sailor with a pair of glowing eyes. It doesn't have the same effect that it would if we didn't see all the close-ups on all the people's eyes throughout the movie. I don't know. It just really starts to feel like Fulci overall was given a decent chunk of change to work with. He had some great locations and a wonderful effects crew. And, even the cast is pretty game for this type of film. But he proceeded to make a movie of kind of otherworldly and unintentional hilarity, more so than a fully realized horror movie. And, that's not necessarily a bad thing depending on what kind of mood strikes you. But I'm not sure if I can recommend this as anything beyond camp. Personally speaking, I like it a lot, don't get me wrong, but I see it as more of a Burial Ground type rather than, a Gates of Hell type. But again, nothing wrong with that. So, I think I'll move on to, between the two infamous Bobs, who do you prefer, Erik?
Well, there's only one Bob for me, you know that. And that would be Senior Hoskins. I love House by the Cemetery, but for me, I don't think it's as much fun as The Beyond or City of the Living Dead. I think it lacks the fever dream vibe that those two films had going on that made them so incredibly unique and memorable, because House by the Cemetery has a much more coherent narrative for a Fulci film of this era. It's still fantastic, but it just, for me, it lacks that just WTF factor of the other two. I would never have considered this a slasher film until you, mentioned it to us a few weeks ago, Joseph. I mean, but looking at it now, I mean, it does have pure slasher movie elements, and it starts off with that canoodling couple being off in very gory circumstances in that house that looks like, Justin's dream location, because it's all dusty and cobwebby and gothic. it really takes the classic image of the haunted house and dials it up to 11. And, everything's just smothered in cobwebs, and there's tombstones and vintage stones and crosses everywhere. And, none of this modern day marble malarkey. It's real old school graveyards and haunted houses, but with a slasher twist. For me, the bubbing of Dob, that's not right. The dubbing of Bob is what I mean to say, is actually one of the highlights of the film for me, because I love the absurdity of it. It sticks out like a sore thumb, I'll admit. And if this was a really serious film, if this was like Schindler's List or Sophie's Choice or something, then yeah, it probably would be in the way. But I think we can get away with it in a Lucio Fulci kind of zombie slasher flick. He opens his mouth at the very start where he's looking at that picture of the girl in the house, and I just fall around the place laughing every time he opens his mouth. He says things, and he starts a lot of his sentences with which nobody does. It's just purely unique for this, whoever this dubbing artist is. She needs a Golden Globe, in my opinion.
Sorry, Eric, I need to interrupt you for just a second. I had a note that I kind of feel bad. I was not going to read this out, but now that you mentioned he opens his mouth a lot, I had him kind of compared to Kanye West, because he's always got his mouth hanging open. I said it there.
There we go. House by the Cemetery and Kanye West in the same sentence. I love the gore in the film as well. I mean, it's probably not as plentiful as in The Beyond or City of the Living Dead, but it certainly is spectacular when it arrives. Like you said, the bat attack, which is supremely bloody. The real estate agent who gets menaced with, the fire poker, whatever it is. There's a lot of blood. The character of Anna, the babysitter, who gets her head chopped off. Her character is really odd, and Leo mentioned it. I mean, she's mopping up the blood on the floor, and nobody sort of acknowledges it. And Norman finds her in the middle of the night taking these, removing these planks of wood from the door of the attic so she can get access to it, or not the attic, the cellar. And nobody asks her what she's doing. It's just really weird behavior, and nobody acknowledges that it's really weird behavior, and I love that. She's a very mysterious character, and the thing that kind of throws me off is that she's almost set up to be a villain in the film, as if she's going to turn out to be in on the killing in some way, but she doesn't. It's just another Fulci idiosyncratic touch, I suppose. That
she gets one of the more horrific deaths too. Yeah,
and her death actually leads to my favorite Bob line, which is, "And Mommy says you're not dead." I'm sorry, my voice is a bit croaky. I can't go as high as Bob at the moment. Yeah, I do love the film. It still has that Fulci strangeness to it, but at its core, it's kind of a monster in the basement kind of movie with all the usual cliches, but just given that weird Fulci twist. So I think it's really entertaining, really fun. My preference out of that sort of purple patch of Fulci's work, from the late 70s to the mid 80s, is for The Beyond and City of the Living Dead, which I think are outstanding. But this is
City of the Living Dead is Gates of Hell, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one I like, the Gates of Hell.
Yeah. Which is really strange, as is The Beyond. Yeah. So, I mean, I miss the really trippy dream logic approach of those films in this one. But for what it is, I think it's still really, really good. So, excellent choice.
Cool. Nathan, what are your thoughts on House by the Cemetery?
I love House by the Cemetery. I think this movie is fantastic. To me, it feels like a nightmare, like a lot of Fulci movies, for me do. It's like his gore movies feel very nightmarish because it has that quality. There's that scene earlier on with the mannequin Anne, I guess, where the head falls off the mannequin. And
Anakin.
There you go.
Oh, is that your joke of the week there, Erik?
No, it's actually better than my joke of the week.
Oh, no.
But like you guys, I was so confused by Anne at first because she seems so sinister and everything. But yeah, I mean, I guess not, which, I thought that was another cool little part of the film, actually. It's very bloody, which, I prefer in my slasher movies. I like that. I liked it. And I like Catriona MacColl a lot. And she was in, Fulci's like three big, I guess like kind of movies in this ilk, like that we've talked about. And yeah, I thought that was, I liked seeing her in these movies. I listened to her commentary just as an aside on the Beyond, and it sounds like, they had like fun making the film. So, that's always good to hear. But yeah, in The House by the Cemetery, I was kind of like you. I wasn't sure if I would call it a slasher, but then I'm like, well, maybe it is. I mean, it opens with your classic slasher setup, and then one poor character gets stabbed in the back of the head. Although it was great, like Dr. Fruitstein did really good there when he stabbed like the blade like perfectly come through the mouth. I mean,
Have you had a lot of practice coming through the mouth, Eric?
I'm not going to even dignify that with an answer. It's so disgusting.
How is Dr. Freudstein able to see?
This is it. How is he able to breathe or smell? Because he's reconstructed himself from all these people's parts, but he hasn't given himself eyes, nose, or a mouth.
Yeah, and he's just full of maggots.
Yeah. I mean, come on, get somebody to do a proper job.
I don't understand how he's able to go after these people.
He obviously has been to the same optician as Michael Myers after the end of Halloween 2.
Ah, yes. Somebody did some really good work back then, apparently, on these killers. But I loved the film, loved the ending. It's just a complete WTF, and I absolutely love those kind of things. And yeah, I mean, I just can't say anything bad about it, honestly. I loved every bit of it. So there you have it.
Right. Well, I do love these three Lucio Fulci movies. I would probably say that this is the lesser of the three for me. I still kind of adore it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all, and it's kind of interesting with Lucio Fulci because he's such an interesting character because he had no interest in horror movies at all when he started out, and he kind of not necessarily. A lot of Italian directors were kind of dilettantes, and they turned their hand to westerns, romances, historical dramas, whatever kind of came along as kind of jobbing directors. So he kind of so it's kind of interesting with this. It kind of for me, I was just looking at it because where's this fall in the kind of the trilogy? It's
Last.
It's last, is it? You're right. Yeah, because it seems to me almost like he's taken a note of Dario Argento's Inferno, obviously the sequel to Suspiria, which is in itself is a fantastic movie. I mean, I think it's a better movie than this, but it doesn't make a great deal of sense. It kind of operates in its own kind of weird dream-like logic, and so it feels like Fulci, and whether or not Argento borrowed, because I know City of the Living Dead was 1980, wasn't it? So I know they had a bit of a rivalry friendly rivalry going between them, but it kind of works in that it's kind of strange because it has that feel that it's kind of set in some kind of reality, especially in the scenes in New York to start off with, and also the kind of the more mundane scenes of Catriona McCall going shopping and in the town and everything. But it has once they get to the house, everything it's just like it's almost going to this portal to this kind of weird sort of other world when nothing quite makes sense and nobody really acts like they should. It's full of like what the fuckeries. It's the babysitter character as we mentioned. Her actions seem to make no sense, and it'd be interesting for us to actually discuss whether or not what we actually think the whole thing means. Because the husband, there's a kind of plot point, isn't there, about the husband said he'd been to the house. The librarian said he'd been to the house of his daughter some years before.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did they ever resolve that plot point? Because I don't remember that.
I was like, did I miss something at the end? Did they resolve that? Because he's asked it twice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It also kind of reminds you of like The Shining. I had read that someone had pointed that out in one of the articles I was reading. I was doing a little research. When Jack's in the bathroom with Delbert Grady, there's that moment where is it like another? You know what I mean? Like that's the connection I kind of saw too.
Yeah, I saw kind of contemporary reviews at the time compared it to The Shining and also the Amityville Horror as a kind of two kind of touch points of where, because obviously Fulci arguably, well, one of his best known was Zombie 2 or Zombie Flesh Eaters, which of course wouldn't have happened without the success of George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead. And so the kind of magpie nature of Italian filmmaking is kind of legendary. But Fulci kind of makes stuff, takes it and makes it his own, just like Dario Argento did and other Italian directors did. But there definitely Fulci would have made this with a view of kind of taking on some influences from popular horror films at the time. It's interesting because I was watching it and thinking, what would Fulci have done with completely a slasher movie? And not arguably, New York Ripper is a kind of slasher movie, but it's more of a kind of police procedural serial killer movie. But the opening scene can remind me of the opening scene in Superstition, kind of another kind of slasher movie that's kind of wrapped up in sort of supernatural shenanigans. But yeah, I wonder what Fulci would have made if he'd actually gone straight ahead and tried to kind of do his version of Friday the 13th or Halloween.
I think it'll probably be like Skullduggery.
Yes, I think you're probably right. I mean, he's kind of obviously hedging his bets, isn't he, with the opening scene? You feel, if you only watch the first 5 minutes of House by Cemetery, you think this is going to be, complete early 80s slasher movie. But then he's got his zombies in there as well, because obviously that's what he was known for. So it's kind of it's a kind of film that you kind of, it's not something if you were introducing people to Italian horror, whether or not this would be the movie to do so, I'm not entirely sure. Because I'm just thinking a lot of people wouldn't really look past the kind of idiosyncrasies, the bad dubbing, and the nonsensical plot. But in a lot of ways, that is the beauty of the film. Those things actually going to make it. And I don't know whether or not Fulci actually even cared if the film made sense. I don't think he probably did. I think he was far more about the visuals, so these kind of plot points, because there's various things. And say the husband was supposedly this doppelganger of somebody who'd been, because I thought maybe he was a reincarnation or whatever of Dr. Freudstein. Maybe that's but it couldn't have been the case, because the guy who's speaking to him, because Freudstein presumably died back in Victorian times or became a zombie back then. So that kind of makes sense. Also, the babysitter stuff didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that the Lucy, Katerina McCall character, didn't leave the house when she should, and felt the whole place was really creepy, but still was quite happy to leave Bob there with the creepy babysitter, who she said to her husband, "Oh, she's nuts" or something.
And that's another way you can tell this is 1981. They leave Bob in the back of the seat of their car while they go get the keys to the house. I mean, just leave him sitting there.
Well, they're not great parents.
Yeah, it's like, have they not heard of Stranger Danger? I mean, I know that's pretty much around the time of that. Yeah.
I mean, you can tell from the off that it's not going to be like a normal type film, because, Bob's talking to this picture, this little girl, ghost girl in a photo, and his mother just takes it as if it's a completely normal thing, and doesn't question him about it at all. And I don't know if you guys spotted the, again, of the typical, wonderfully typical Italian move, that the cameo, the kind of Hitchcockian cameo that Fulci had in this and like many of his films, where he stands next to the bus talking to the father character. On the bus, it's a J&B whiskey advert on the bus. And it said, bizarrely, I wrote down, it said the thing, it says, "Give J&B, it whispers."
Well, there's also a wine advert, so that whole bus was just like waiting to crash.
But yeah, no, I enjoy it. It's kind of it is kind of like a fever dream, but I would still say it's not as ambitious as The Beyond, and not as creepy as City of the Living Dead. But one thing we haven't mentioned, which I think the creepiest thing in the whole movie for me, was Dr. Freudstein crying like a child. That was the thing that always got me. It's just kind of really creepy, because whether that is meant to mean that he's killed a child and taken on their voice, I don't know what that's supposed to indicate.
Well, I hope he didn't take on the voice of whoever dubbed Bob.
You can imagine, yes. But you kind of like because whoever's going, it obviously makes sense if he's chopping up bits, because when he goes up to kill Bob, or he's going up the stairs with a knife, the hand that's holding the knife is just like normal. It's not, so he's got like a lovely hand. He could be a hand model, but he hasn't obviously, done anything with his face, as we mentioned. And then, of course, the whole ending is this kind of weird cyclical idea that, you've got this little girl playing who's seemingly being able to transport herself between Victorian times and modern times. So again, it's quite what American audiences or English audiences would have made of this at the time. I don't know, but I'm sure when we get some background, we'll get some insight on that. But well, thank you for picking it, Leo, because it's definitely been an interesting one to talk about.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I love discussing it. I'd love to hear all your opinions. They're all awesome on this. You mentioned about the crying. It kind of reminded me of Mario Bava's "Kill Baby Kill." Didn't that have like a crying, like in the background, sort of same type of crying?
I haven't seen that movie for such a long time. I need to rewatch it. But yeah, I mean, it's always quite disconcerting, isn't it? That noise anyway.
Very off. Something's very off about it, but it works for me. It works. I don't know what it is. It's just weird the way he puts this stuff together and seems to make it work in my eyes anyway. Excellent.
Well, shall we talk about some backgrounds? What have you got for us, Leo?
All right, I have some things. I won't hog up. I took a lot of notes and stuff. I was going through I have a couple of Fulci film books. I have the one by Stephen, is this Thrower, I think his name is.
Yeah.
I have that book. Unfortunately, I can't find it because I moved a year and a half ago, and I have like 800 books that I need to get bookcases for. So they're all in boxes. I did pull out Splintered Visions. There's a Troy Howarth book just to skim through that a little bit. So it was filmed in March 16th through May in 1981, 8 weeks. They did a couple weeks in the U.S. And in typical Fulci fashion, all the stuff in New York was shot without permits, just like Zombie in New York. It's amazing how, now you can't even imagine that even beginning to take place. It also shot in Massachusetts. They did the final 6 weeks. Most of the interiors were done at the Rome, the De Paula Studios. You mentioned the bat attack. This is actually the second bat attack. The first one, there was a scene in a lizard in a woman's skin. Another bat attack, just to throw that out there. The opening scene girl, these names are so hard to pronounce, Daniela Doria. She did 3 films with Fulci, and she's never survived any of them. She puked her guts up in City of the Living Dead. She suffocated to death in The Black Cat, and she was the mutilated prostitute in New York Ripper. The Ellis Estate is the name of the house. It's in Massachusetts. It's still standing to this day. It's 120 acres. It was built in 1830, and for me, the house itself is a character. I love the house. I would love to. You can actually visit it. It's like a museum now. And I also found out that Umberto Lenzi's 1988 film Ghost House was also filmed there. I think some other films were filmed there, but I couldn't find anything else about what else might have been filmed there. When we were talking about the weird scene with the babysitter cleaning up the blood, Katrina McCall had said that, they shot. She said, I mean, everybody knows most films are filmed, they're never filmed in the order they're cut together. But she said in this film, it seemed like they were cutting like even more around where. When she looks at it, she kind of laughs because she said, it was probably done like with something in the beginning, then something towards the end, which means, that's why it looks like so weird. And she also found that very amusing. The father, played by Piello Marco, is also a New York Ripper. Him and Fulci became really good friends. Lucio Fulci had this reputation. He was more like a bully on set. He would bully the actors. He would yell a lot. But when Paolo got to the set, he was taken aback, and he saw the way he was treating people. Then he started, bullying him. He said, "Look," he said, "you're either going to cut the shit or I'm going to get on a plane. I'm walking off the set." And then the next day, Fulci was the total 160. He was friendly to him, and they actually remained friends right up to the time he died. He had some bad health problems toward the end of his life. He was actually in the hospital when he was having a heart surgery, and he said they remained friends. They used to eat together. They would cook meals together, and their families were pretty close. So that was nice to see. Sylvia Catalina, I think that's how I said her, that played May. I read a couple things. She said she loved being on set. She was constantly coached. She said Fulci was nice to her. He was really nice to her. And Giovanni Frezza, who played Bob, she said, she had no problems with him and she liked him a lot. Speaking of Bob, he quit acting. He did do a couple other movies. Some of them were uncredited, though. I see that it was he played, I think, the character Kirk in Demons, which I do remember him in that, and he was also in, I think, Manhattan Baby as well. He, like I said, he quit acting. He actually got a degree in physics, and he lives in Chicago right now, and he's very successful. He's like the director of a big firm, and doing really well.
He was also in the beginning of Blade in the Dark as well.
I just saw that at the bottom of the thing, which is it's coming up for you guys, correct?
Yeah, we did a commentary for that for Vinegar Syndrome.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Annie Pieroni, who played Anne, she was also in Inferno, and she was the shoplifter in Tenebrae, I believe. And I asked Joseph this. I'm not sure if it's the same actress. Erik, is it Dagmar Lasseter? That's the one from Werewolf Woman, right?
Oh, yeah. That's Daniela, isn't it?
Yeah.
I need to rewatch this then. She's the real estate agent, is she?
Yes. She was also in A Hatchet for the Honeymoon, that's way back when, and then she was also in Fulci's Black Cat and a movie called Forbidden Photos of Above Suspicion. That's a Jolly, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I hate you, you whore!
There you go. Okay. The cinematography, which I think is excellent in this movie, Sergio Savati. This is their 10th collaboration. Fulci pretty much used the same crew, just like Roger Corman did. That's why I think some of these films have like such similar looks and they have the same type atmosphere. Because apparently, I guess with the tech side, Fulci didn't really, argue with these people as much. Although I did read that the one of the writers, they had a bit of a falling out. The guy also did some work. This is one writer. I can't remember his name at the moment, but he also worked with Argento, and he seemed to say he goes, well, I wrote the story. They just filmed what I wrote. So there was this bitter thing with this one writer. The screenplay originally was called House of Freudstein. I don't know if that was supposed to be like House of Frankenstein, like a Universal Monsters connection. And in Italy, the film was called That Hotel Near the Swamp. Now, that sounds like a strange title, but I read that the reason why they went with that title was because Tobe Hooper's Eaten Alive was very popular in Italy. So, I guess they felt that was, a way to attract people. Because like Justin had said, the Italians were famous for, pillaging all the stuff to make these movies. The screenwriter also, he had a huge career. He did great movies, Killer Crocodile 1 and 2, The Church. He was uncredited on. He did Demons 1 and 2, Body Count, Blade in the Dark. He also had an uncredited, which I thought was very strange, for Amityville Horror 2. I wish I wrote the guy's name down. I'm sorry I didn't, but I thought that was kind of odd too. And like I said, he had a big falling out with, with Fulci at the end anyway. So yeah, going back to that, the Shining thing. The person I read this article I had read that said that was a huge movie at the time, and like Justin said, so was Amityville Horror. And I guess it shows that Fulci definitely had his pulse on the pop culture of the time, and he was conscious of it. So I think that's why some of these things that seem to make sense. Also, Jack Torrance went, he was down on his luck, he needed the money. And the father in the House by the Cemetery even says at the beginning, when Catriona doesn't want to go, he's like, well, look, it's $5,000. At least we'll be able to decorate the whole apartment. So, and they're also doing research. Jack Torrance doing research. So I could kind of see that. And also the axe in the door, I guess, when he tries to bust Bob out of the thing. It's a hatchet, but you just still see the blade go through the door, just like the famous scene from The Shining. So I do have some other stuff, but I don't want to hog it all. So that's all I can give you for now.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Leo. So who else has got something? Erik, have you got anything?
I had everything that Leo had.
Of course.
And well, I will just mention that I have that book as well, Leo. It's called Beyond Terror: The Films of Lucio Fulci by Stephen Thrower, and he has it's got an index at the back. It's a bibliography or whatever it is at the back telling you the release dates of all his films. And between August 1980 and August 1981, he released 5 films. House by the Cemetery was the last one. The first was Contraband on August the 8th, 1980. City of the Living Dead on August the 11th, 1980, 3 days later. Black Cat came out on the 4th of April, 1981. The Beyond on the 29th of April, 1981. And House by the Cemetery on the 14th of August, 1981. So it was filmed in March and April of 81 in New England, and then the interiors were filmed at studios in Rome. But that's all I have for background. Apart from everything Leo said and everything you were about to say, Justin.
Of course. Well, thank you, Erik. Nathan, how about you?
No.
Nathan, you're supposed to say you had everything that Leo said. No?
Well, I mean, I did, but I also, like you, I have everything that Justin's about to say, and I don't want to take that away from him.
I know, because we're so kind.
So I was just about to say Toya's one of the worst things I've ever heard. I can't believe you said that, Nathan.
No,
Justin, how could you?
Yeah, Justin, lowering yourself.
So, Joseph, how about you?
Yeah, I remember owning the old Vestron VHS that was released back in 1984, and reportedly it was released with reels out of order, so one character would die and then show up very much alive later in the film. I don't quite recall ever actually watching that particular tape. You know, my vague memories are of watching the Vipco release from the early 90s when I first saw it. So I did own the Vestron version, but I don't think I ever watched it. So if any of you guys own that tape, maybe you can confirm. But I did eventually, unfortunately, sell that tape, which is, worth a lot of money now. Trailers for Curtains and The House on Sorority Row accompany House by the Cemetery on that Vestron release, apparently. As mentioned previously, that fantastic TV spot you heard or saw, if you're watching this on YouTube, was narrated by Brother Theodore. He's that curmudgeonly, diminutive grump, most notable for his role as Reuben Klopek in 1989's The Burbs. Personal favorite of mine, and he had lent his kind of stern voice to a lot of those trailers back in the day, and that TV spot in particular has always been one of my favorites. The House by the Cemetery apparently had a budget of about $700,000 in US dollars. In Italy, the film grossed 1,407,981,297 lira, making it Fulci's most financially successful horror film of the 80s, in Italy at least. And it looks like it grossed over $1.5 million in U.S. territories. I mean, one of you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but the 1,407,000,000 lira, whatever, totals out to just under 800,000 US dollars. So it appears to have kind of broken even in Italy rather than being this huge, profitable machine. But, maybe his earlier films there just didn't do all that well, and they were just kind of happy to break even. But with the U.S. gross combined, and I'm sure worldwide, the film did turn a healthy profit. But that's all the background I have. Justin, take it away.
Okay, well, I've got a few bits that obviously a lot of it's already been covered, but I did look at some reviews from the time, and as you probably can guess, they weren't particularly glowing. Bill Kelly in South Florida Sun Sentinel said, and this is from one of the things as I mentioned, it was released in Italy in 1981, as has already been mentioned, but it didn't get its US release until late 1984 through to 1985. So a good 4 years after it had been made. But so for its Florida release in December of 1984, Bill Kelly said, Cemetery predictably high in blood and violence. He criticised Lucio Fulci and said he wasn't able to get good performances out of his actors, but he did praise the cinematography, which he said was crisp, moody and fluid. sorry, excuse me. Another review in the Hattiesburg American said The House by the Cemetery is bottom of the barrel filmmaking and should be avoided at all costs. So I'm sure that was one used on the box release. But Malcolm L. Johnson in the Hartford Courant led with chaotic cemetery is a mess of blood, bones and banality. I found a review from August 1981 in La Stampa, which was an Italian newspaper, and it said, Director Fulci, our local Gothic film director, demonstrates the preliminary dexterity of making a shocking horror story visually effective. But otherwise wasn't a very good review, and it criticised something which I know is kind of a bit of a bête noire of yours, Joseph, isn't it? It's the kind of the constant putting the child in peril.
Yeah, I find that kind of cheap. I mean, it's not like I care, something like Rawhead Rex where it's just so sudden and unexpected, and I know that's kind of the wrong movie to use considering how bad that movie is, but where they do it in Rawhead Rex where it's sudden and unexpected, I like it. But when they set a kid up to be just in constant danger of being killed or something, it just feels, I don't know, it feels cheap. Like they couldn't figure out a better way to do it. Like they couldn't figure out a better way to wring suspense out of something.
Well, that was something that they picked up in that review. But the film obviously got one of the things, I think, did we mention about it? Obviously became an infamous video nasty, didn't it, in the UK?
It did.
And it was one of the, although I think it was, because it was released in the UK cinemas in October of 1982, so like a year after it being out in Italy. But it was actually cut. The cinema release was cut. I'm not sure by how much. But
the Vestron tape was cut by 3 minutes, so that's probably what it was cut in U.S. cinemas as well.
Right. Okay. Because it said it was placed on the video nasties list. It was even though the version which I used to have the I think it was on Vampix. I think it was Vampix label, like a pre-cert of it, and it was so the pre-cut version was banned in the UK, and then when it was re-released in home video in 1988, it had 4 minutes and 11 seconds of the film cut, and so it was only released uncut in the UK in 2009. I think probably on the Arrow release, but the film had a kind of a bit of renaissance with critics. I found a kind of a mini review of the showing on Film 4. There's a kind of UK digital channel here from 2010, and the Sunday Telegraph called it a masterpiece of its type. And lastly, there's the Barbara Crampton film We Are Still Here, directed by Ted Geoghegan.
It's Gagan.
Gagan. Oh, Gagan.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the dude he used to run the Diabolical Dominion with me and Patrick back in the 90s.
Ah, okay.
And we actually will be covering We Are Still Here on Patreon somewhat soon.
Well, he said that the film We Are Still Here was heavily influenced by The House by the Cemetery. So yes, that's all I have.
All of Fulci's movies must have ended up on the video nasty list, right? Right, all of them?
Yes.
Most of them, yeah.
Most of them. I mean, Zombie Flesh Eaters was probably one of the most notorious ones. The New York Ripper wasn't allowed in the country, so it didn't get a video release.
Yeah, it couldn't be banned because it was never released, so it didn't make that list.
I think it was kind of. I mean, back then, I know infamously the BBFC ordered. I think it was Maniac with Joe Spinell, the Bill Lustig movie, to be escorted out of the country. So the Beyond got a cinema release in the UK, a heavily truncated version, and I think that got us whether or not I think that did get banned as well. So
yeah, that was a Section 2 one.
Right, yeah. So all of those kind of, and obviously the City of the Living Dead, The Gates of Hell, was another one. So yeah, he was probably, I imagine he probably was a director with the most video nasties on that list, I would think. You know, he was making back in the late 60s, early 70s. I mean, he was doing the Jali, like one on top of another, with Marissa Mell and John Sorrell, and then of course Liz in the Woman's Skin is kind of Don't Torture a Duckling is kind of where that kind of gore, the kind of extreme gore thing started coming through, which obviously found an audience. So But yeah, I mean, I must admit, I'm not a huge fan of his later films. You know, after I have got Demonia on Blu-ray, which I haven't seen for a long time. But I've told this story before, but I'd say to mention again that I think it was, is it Demonia, or is that the one with the nuns and the slugs on the face, or the snails on the face?
That's Enigma. Enigma is the one with the snails on the face.
Oh, Enigma, yeah. Because that was the one that I'm sure I said before that I rented from a video shop, and the whole family watched it, including my grandmother. And then I was told I was not allowed to rent anything else ever again for the family. Okay. Well, what was the consensus on the group, Joseph?
Well, a fairly impressive 48 comments for Fulci. That's what I like to see. Alex Bovenstein from Instagram writes, for a movie about a house where everyone who enters gets brutally murdered, I find this to be extremely cozy to watch. Also, Bob is an absolute delight. Ingo Dirkschneider from Facebook says, seen it many times, doing my best to like it, but something's amiss with it for me. Maybe it's the poor dialogue, maybe it's the frantic storytelling, or something completely different, I don't know. Can't fault its moody and atmospheric sets, though. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date on what we're doing. Listen on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and about a billion other podcatchers, both good and terrible. Join us on Patreon for as little as $1, and there's a tier system in place that will grant you access to a veritable cavalcade of bonus shows and commentaries. That's patreon.com/The Hysteria Continues, all one word. Our email address for feedback and that general nonsense is also The Hysteria Continues, all one word, at gmail.com. That's our email address that we never get feedback sent to. So that's The Hysteria Continues at gmail.com for feedback. That's The Hysteria Continues.
It's like Happy Death Day.
Email's so last century.
It is. It's so antiquated. I'm surprised we actually get feedback at all when we do, honestly.
Well, hopefully we have got some for the next show or the previous show, because we're doing a bit of time travel, recording things slightly out of whack. But I know we do have some feedback, haven't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
On the last show.
We did have some feedback.
We did have some feedback, but and it just remains just to apologise to Leo for this.
It's my joke of the week. It's so bright and fantastic.
What happens if you move into a house by a cemetery? You put yourself in grave danger. Grave danger. I have had a lot of time this week.
Well, he warned us ahead of time, so
yeah.
Thank you, Eric.
I liked it, actually.
I thought it was quite a good one. Yeah.
Eric, it wasn't a bad joke, but you can do better.
Violence and perfume.
That's all I've got to say.
See, you went for the low-hanging fruit.
It was low-hanging fruit. But I couldn't think of any puns for Giovanni Frezza.
Yeah.
Maybe he's about as bland as a Fresca.
What's a Fresca? Is that a drink?
It's like a ginger ale or something.
What can I add to that? Not much, apart from what are we covering next time?
I totally sucked all the energy out of the podcast.
So what are we covering next time?
It's Nathan's pick next time.
Yeah, Nathan. And I actually have no idea what he's going to pick for once.
Holy cow. I didn't realize it was already back to me. I feel like I just picked.
Well, you did, because we're recording my pick next, but it'll be out before this one, if you follow me.
Okay, yeah, you're right. The time travel thing. Joseph, there was a certain sequel that you were having me hold off on picking, but if you're not going to pick it, then I'm picking it.
Well, what is it?
Sleepaway Camp 3.
Why was I having you hold off on that?
I don't remember, but you said that somebody, I don't know if it was like a pick that someone had, kind of like what Leo did or what, but I've been wanting to cover it, but I held off because you were going to pick it.
I don't see Sleepaway Camp 3 anywhere. I would never pick it because honestly, I don't care for the Sleepaway Camp sequels, but have at it.
Okay, yeah, it's in my top 10. So yeah, Sleepaway Camp 3.
Okay, I think what the actual thing was, we were trying to get you to hold off picking anything, Nathan.
You will love this film, I promise.
I've seen it already, and I know I won't.
Oh,
You'll love it on this viewing.
Okay, well, let's see. So, next time we'll come back with Angela back to camp, and look forward to having you back on the show, Leo. So, thank you for sparking lots of healthy debate. And hope you enjoyed returning.
Yes, I would always enjoy returning, guys. I appreciate all of you and appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. So,
thank you, Leo.
Yes, thank you. And what are we playing out with?
Well, for shits and giggles, we're going to play out with The House by the Cemetery by Mortician. That's not really my thing, but for all of you Cookie Monster fans out there, here's The House by the Cemetery by Mortician.
Is it something to the Muppets?
It's a death metal band. I think the song is actually inspired by the film, so why not?
Okay, well, we shall see. So again, well, thank you for listening to the Hysteria Continues, and thank you for everyone who supports us through Patreon. Got lots of exciting things coming up. And also, we've got some other commentaries that we're nailing down shortly. So we'll let you know what those are when we can. Thank you for listening. And again, thanks to Leo. And say goodbye to the good people.
Bye. Enjoy Mortician.
Bye. Enjoy, I don't know what.
Goodbye.